Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Joseph here with our production manager, Zaira, and we're here today to do another how-to video, but we're structuring it more according to our Real Talk with Apple Zaira videos, which we do on our Patreon campaign. So if you want to check some of those out, we've done one so far. We're planning to do more in the future, but you can go to our Patreon, select either the $5 tier or up, and there you can see some of the personal content we create. In the meantime, we're going to get started with this video, which is part of our how-to series on do's and don'ts for Catholic spirituality in college.
Woo!
And we've got our mugs with our straws in them, so we are ready. I'm being healthy. I have water.
I have Mountain Dew. So unhealthy.
Back several months ago, we got talking about testimonies, and Zaira told me hers about her experience in college and the difficulties she had before coming to Franciscan at a secular university. So today we're going to be talking about her experience and then my experience at Franciscan and kind of going off of each other and giving you guys advice for how to deal with keeping up a spiritual life in college.
And what not to do.
Right. So my first question is, what were your expectations for your faith going into college?
Well, when I was in high school, I liked to call myself a Protestant Catholic because I felt like I was like really in your face and like a Bible beater. Occasionally I would even bring my Bible to school, and if my friends swore or insulted each other, I'd like pull it out and be like, read Ephesians 4:29. When I realized that I was going to a secular university because I had in-state tuition at the time, I was like, oh, I'm going to go there, and if they don't have focused missionaries, I'm going to start focused ministry on the campus, and I'm going to convert all 40,000 students to Catholicism. It's going to be great. But that's not what happened. So my expectations were like way up there. I really should have had more realistic expectations.
Coming to Franciscan, I definitely had a lot of expectations. I would say that I was surprised in a way just because of, not everybody. A lot of people here are Catholic. At the same time, there are a lot of Catholics that have disagreements about specific things and a lot of different ways of handling those specific things. So it was really important for me to try to be able to adjust and learn from exactly where people were coming from in different situations, whereas in a more tightly knit homeschool group, not from back at home, not that I had never heard an opinion different from mine, but in a group back at home where I knew the people more personally, and we might have had like much more minor disagreements on different things, so it was easier to talk about those things than coming to college where those things could be wider and a little bit more different, and some Catholics being a little bit too over the top, or some Catholics being
too liberal.
Yeah, because believe it or not, that is the situation at Franciscan. So trying to have conversations about things when you at first don't have that relationship which you've established with some friends at home with over years and years was important to try and adjust to for me.
For sure. So definitely for starters, so like the first tip would be make realistic expectations.
Yes.
And be aware that people will have a difference of opinion and understanding of even the same faith. So like when you're having conversations, be considerate of a different person's worldview.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into the next question I have is, how exactly were things different when you went to a secular university than what you expected?
Well, I mean, a lot of my references will be comparing to high school because I only went to a secular university for my freshman year, and then I transferred to Franciscan after that. So like when I was in high school, I was exceptionally lucky that I went to a public school where all of my friends chose to maintain my innocence. When they were like, oh, you don't swear, that's great for you, cover your ears, I'm gonna curse. Or like, oh, you're Catholic, okay, cover your ears while I talk about my sexual exploits. Like, I was super lucky to go to a public school where I had friends who actually chose to do that for me. I didn't even ask them to do that, and they chose that, which was amazing. So I was a little naive going to college expecting that people would appreciate or cherish my innocence. But in reality, their goal was to teach me how to function in modern society. So it was much more attacking my beliefs and attacking my worldview and attacking what I would and wouldn't do, because for them it seemed almost ignorant of me not to do those things.
Right.
So like my expectations were high school, where everyone would just let me be me and accept that I didn't want to swear and I didn't care about having sex with everyone that I met, or, drinking underage. But that was the exact opposite of what I got. They were like, you should swear. I want to teach you how to drink. Or you should totally like sleep with a guy after a month of knowing him. Like, it was absolutely bizarre to me. I guess you could call it culture shock of both of them public schools, but one where people actually cared for my innocence and another where they didn't. And that's something that you really can't prepare for going into college, other than just knowing it's a thing and it could happen. Yeah.
And I think as far as sometimes I do see something which I kind of want to point out as far as like different things that I at a certain time expected when talking to somebody I disagree with. Because long story short, the first debate I ever had was, before college, before high school. I had a neighbor who told me that I thought abortion was just like, like the thing, like don't know, who thinks that's okay? That's ridiculous. A neighbor of mine who was a good friend of mine, for some reason we ended up on the conversation. He was like, no, I think it's okay. And I was just like, I was shocked, and I did not handle the situation well, basically. And I had to learn from that point on, that you can't handle debate by just practically like shouting with like tears in your eyes, you can't debate, you can't talk to somebody like that. And I think one of the keys, I think that going into college, especially if you're going into a secular university, I feel like a lot of times, even in Catholic communities, when we talk about people that disagree with us, we can often make it seem like they're vicious. And maybe some people are vicious, maybe some people are like that. But there are people who do things because they think, oh, this is what's going to make me happy. This is what's going to make you happy. So I'm going to teach you how to do this thing and it's going to make you happy. But like when you meet them at the very beginning, they seem pretty chill, reasonable people.
For sure.
And that throws off your entire psyche, because when you're talking about these people when they're not there, it's just like, oh, you think like they're like this vicious, like whatever. And then you see them, they're just like, oh, they're really chill. And so like maybe I should start to, everything gets thrown off. So I think it's also important that going into college, secular university, or even a Catholic one, that you recognize that, it maybe for a Catholic one, like, oh, maybe somebody, disagrees with your opinions on the Mass or this or that. But it's key to remember that these people are people. Many times they're not vicious.
Yeah, so in parallel to my experience at a secular university, all of my friends were super nice. Like, they were very understanding. They were like, oh, you're Catholic, that's great. But you should drink and you should have sex and you should swear and all of that stuff, because otherwise you're a child. So, like, it's not that they were, mean and vicious, but they just didn't have my best interest at heart. And it was because what they thought was good for me was not what was actually good for me.
Yeah.
And it's very different when you are talking about, like, oh, someone with a different ideology, and you demonize them in your head. Yeah. It's like, oh, well, it's easy to just be like, oh, well, they're terrible people. But my friends were nice people. I loved hanging out with them. Yeah. Like, they were everything to me. And honestly, a lot of them were nicer to me than some of the Catholics in the community there. Like, there were some friends that were, like, actively practicing a gay lifestyle who were more accepting of the fact that I was Catholic than the Catholic community accepting me in as one of their own, which was, to me, was even more bizarre. And when you've never experienced such a drastic difference, like, to me, it was like, well, who's actually being more Catholic? The people who are accepting me and loving me, or the people who are despite the fact that I'm not doing anything wrong,
Yeah.
not even talking to me
Yeah.
whenever I actively reach out.
Right.
So to me, that was like really
Yeah.
bizarre, and it didn't fit in my expectations.
You know, knowing that these people, you know, they're not monsters. You also have to we also have to remember that sin and the person are not the same. So the sin that might that might have them trapped, that they're just like, oh, well, I think this might actually make me happy, so I'm going to try to encourage you to do it. We always have to remember, because we always get this image of Satan as this like evil person with a pitchfork that does something extremely right, and then there's like this extreme right. A lot of times it can be a lot more murky. He doesn't tempt us. I don't remember where I heard this, but he doesn't tempt us with these things that are just like all out. It's with the subtle things that he tries to kind of like sneak in with. So there can be an amount of goodness. This is why Jesus doesn't like lukewarmness, because like, oh, there's some good here, and then we're attracted to that good, and rightfully so. There's good to be attracted to, and there's good in other people that we can be friends with. We just can't allow the bad that sometimes comes along with it to affect us as well. Okay, so next question. What aspect of the unexpected was key to your change?
And by change, he means fall. He's being nice.
I try.
I call my freshman year my pre-conversion year. But it's because when I came to Franciscan, actually, when I transferred, the theme that year was continual conversion, which was honestly probably the best theme that I could have had, because it gave me the freedom to believe that I could internally reconvert and re-own my faith, as opposed to like feeling like, well, I lost it, so it's not mine. But yeah, so I would say that the key thing that I did not expect that led to my fall was my over-reliance on people instead of God. Mm-hmm. I am what I call 100% extrovert. Joe thought he was an extrovert until he met me.
Yeah, I at least have a little bit of introvertedness in me that I can use to help like survival mode and survive pretty well. No. But like, yeah, she's more extroverted than I am.
So like, I was part of what I had thought was a big family until I came to Franciscan. I'm one of 5 kids in my family. So to me, it was always difficult asking to go out and hang out with people, because there's 5 kids and we all did music lessons. 2 to 3 kids at a time had jobs. There was sports. Like there was so much going on. So I didn't like ask to go hang out with friends a lot when I was in high school. So when I went to college, and you don't have to worry about a car or your siblings or ask your parents' permission to talk to someone.
Yeah.
I exploded. It was friends every hour of every day, which was really exciting and super fun. And I totally encourage you guys to create a social life, but I chose my friends very poorly. I didn't take advantage of some of the Christian groups that were not Catholic, because they weren't Catholic, so that's not what I was looking for. And I just became friends with some people who were really cool, and I loved hanging out with them, but they had very different ideologies. And by the time I learned that, I had such an emotional attachment to them that like it started breaking my psyche and my understanding of who I was in relation to them and who I was in relation to God, because by that point, like, they were my best friends, and like, they're telling me that what I believe is wrong, and I've never been challenged like that, because like I said, my experience at a public high school was exceptionally amazing for a young, naive Catholic. And I don't mean to say that naive is bad, because there's a beauty in innocence. But to them, naivety was bad, and they thought they were genuinely helping me as a person by trying to teach me all of these secular values as opposed to Christian values. And by the time I was able to like actually be aware of that fact, I was so tied into them as people, and I hadn't had a strong enough spiritual support system that like all of my questions were left unanswered. I had no one to go to ask these questions, no support other than the people that were intentionally trying to go against what I had believed my whole life. So I would say that was key, was that I put way too much emphasis on my friendships with these people, and almost no emphasis on my spiritual life. And honestly, this all happened within like the first month. And then by the time like was able to realize like I had spent so much time getting to know these people and building no support system for my faith that like as time went on, it was just that much harder to go back. Had you known me, what would you have advised me to do?
Well, I would definitely say that as far as some of the things, like you didn't have answers to questions that were being posed. I would say that would be a very important thing to do, because our faith is all about faith and reason. And it's so important to have both of them. So as far as like the questions you didn't have answered, say you're walking through a bad part of a neighborhood and your friend knows it, and you go, okay, we have our phone numbers, so like I need to have my phone on me in case you need it, in case you're in trouble. You have a backup in case you're in trouble. So I'd say if I would have known you and know you were going into this situation, like, because again, you said you're kind of like naive, like I'm gonna do this and this is gonna be great. The first thing I'd say is have somebody as backup that you can go and just be talking to, just like, I don't know what to do with this, like help me out here, and somebody there who you know and trust in their faith to be able to fall back on as a support system. That would be the first thing. The second thing, which really strikes me, is how the great enthusiasm you had, like I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna do this, but the key word being I. Mm-hmm. I am, and that's where so many of us go wrong. Not even in your shape, it's just like even in my own life, I can think of times where just like I'm gonna do this and I got it, and then I humiliate myself, and then I just go to prayer later. I'm just like, yeah, that was my fault.
Crash and burn.
I should have actually trusted you. You actually know what you're doing. So that's always the key. It's great to have enthusiasm, but we always have to remember that you have to rely on the grace of God. And when things get really difficult and you can't feel like you want to do everything, that's when you have to rely on what you can't see, and for that to get you through things. So that's kind of what I would.
For sure. And like referencing a little bit of what I talked about earlier, where I didn't take advantage of the Christian groups, I've watched some of the Emily Wilson videos. Mm-hmm. Like she does some really fun ones. And she did one like a year or two ago, so I didn't have access to it freshman year. But she did a video about like ways to keep your faith in college, and she talked about how you don't, like, if you're going into a secular university and you're trying to find a Catholic group and there isn't one, or the one that's there is not good or healthy for you, mm-hmm. It's okay to go to general Christian groups that are, Baptist or other Protestant denominations, because at least you're maintaining faith, mm-hmm. and you have a solid faith background, and you can establish a relationship where they can respect your Catholicism,
right.
And where even if they don't necessarily believe, they can hold you accountable, mm-hmm. to what you believe. And having that kind of a faith-based system would have been amazing for me, but I did not take advantage of it, because they weren't Catholic and I didn't know better.
Yeah, and no, that then, of course, obviously the next key step with getting involved with a Christian group is similarly, but it wouldn't be as hard as with the secular university. It's just to be on guard, like Protestants are not monsters, and going and be respect. And hey, I mean, at least you're both Christians, and you can both talk about Christ and His goodness, and being able to still at least have that growth you were talking about in a certain way,
for sure.
Even if not completely Catholic. Next question: what was your prayer life like before and during college?
And by college, we mean freshman year.
Yeah.
Okay, so before college, I would say that my prayer life was consistent, but, and at the time I would have said that it was amazing. But it was honestly very superficial. It was like, oh, I want to pray for, my friend who's going through this thing, mm-hmm. and like for what to do in college. Yeah. So it was like very, very general things. Yeah. It wasn't very deeply personal. It wasn't one of the main reasons that that my freshman year was so hard was that like I never had to address my own identity, which as Catholics we believe our identity comes from God. You are a son or a daughter of God, and that is core to your identity in order to reach the fullness of who you are. But I never had to address that question. So when I went to my university freshman year, those were the questions that I was getting. It's like, who are you? What do you think? Not just because your parents taught you to believe that or because the church taught you to believe it, but why do you believe it? Like, they would be fine if I could give them an answer, but I never had those questions. And so I didn't know how to answer them. And that led to kind of like a crisis of identity, which when you don't know who you are, it's hard to convince yourself to talk to the person who knows. Because it's like, I need to figure out who I am before you can tell me who I am, which is absolutely ridiculous because God can tell you who you are just fine. But yeah, my prayer life went completely down the hill freshman year. And like I said, a lot of the issues were like a foundation that I set within the first month, which is why we're putting this video out right at the beginning of the school year. Like the first month is crucial to setting up who you want to be in college and who you want to be for the rest of life, because college is kind of like an audition / preparation for living alone, because you don't have parents telling you what to do all the time, and you choose your friends, you choose those things. And like it led to repercussions like the rest of my year, where even by Christmas time, like I didn't even like the idea of God. Like it was bad.
Yeah.
But it's better now.
Thank the Lord.
One would hope.
Yeah.
When I came back, my parents had seen an actual change in me. I thought that I was way happier. Like, I loved my university when I went there. Almost said the name. Like, I loved it, and I still have fond feelings toward my experience there and toward the friends that I still have, which are some of the better ones that I'd had when I was there. But when I came back, my parents were like, you're distant, you're angry, you're meaner, you don't associate with your family. And like, family used to be the most important thing to me, because I was raised as a military kid where your family is your best friends. Yeah. Because every 3 years you lose everyone but them. Right. So the idea that like within the span of my freshman year, I had completely disowned my family and those friends were my new family was... my parents could see that in me, as in the way I interacted with people. And so they said, it's not good for you, we're taking you out. Which I hated, but was definitely a godsend. Then they gave me the choice to go to school with my mom, who was going to be going back to school, or Franciscan, where my sister was attending. So like I came to Franciscan, and it wasn't like a clean and easy process of like, oh yay, Franciscan, I'm better. It was definitely like I came here and I delved into, like going to masses, going to adoration, going to FOPs with what friends would go with me, trying out for literally everything. I think there were like 5 weekends in a row where I like tried out for some different group. It was absolutely insane. Again, exploding with socialization. And around like November or December, I was confronted again with finding my own identity in myself and in God, because I had started a relationship with someone who was trying to tell me that I was pretty. And I did not react well. Literally ran away. Cried, got a hat to hide my face before I went back. But that tells you like how completely lost my identity was from me. It was super far gone. So I decided to start going to counseling to try and correct my my disconnect in identity, as well as find myself spiritually. And it really helped in my spring semester when I started intending to a household. A household is what I like to call a Franciscan sorority. But basically it's a community of, they are gender separated, so you have boy households and girl households. And each household has a covenant, which is kind of a commitment that you feel drawn to sign, and it's a way to pursue your faith in that community that you can grow together and call each other on in holiness in a way that is unique to your spirituality, because everyone has a different spirituality. Mm-hmm. There's this joking rivalry between charismatics and traditionalists at Franciscan. So like everyone has a different spirituality, and there are over 40 households, so there's a household for all of them. And I had found a household that their entire identity was pursuing Christ as beloved and spiritual motherhood, which even when I was at my darkest, like the one thing I could pray for was other people. Like I would not talk to God for anything for myself, but if my friend was hurting, I would be on my knees in a second. But I had found a household that was going to help, that had like their ideals and commitments were what I wanted. I wanted a childlike love of Christ. I wanted someone, or a spirituality that taught me that it was okay to be loved, that it was okay to be beautiful, and to teach me who I was as a daughter of God. My household is Daughters of Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. It was tough. My big, which was kind of like one of the established daughters who would mentor me during my intent process, she had to deal with a lot, because we had to read Mulieris Dignitatem, which is a apostolic letter on the dignity and vocation of women. I was real angry reading that. I was always saying, but why this? But why that? I don't agree. Like, this is all bad. But it's because I didn't know my own identity, because I was mad that I wasn't like that. And I didn't realize that that's why I was angry. So, like, it took a lot. It was, God bless my big. But I felt like household really helped me like recenter and find more of who I was and who I wanted to be. And like it's always like my sophomore year at Franciscan, like continual conversion. Like I absolutely stand by that. Like every day you have to redecide your faith. You have to redecide who you want to be and all of that stuff. So like it's definitely had ups and downs since then, but a lot of it was just finding a community that already was what I wanted to be. And that really changed my prayer life and my spiritual life in general. Yeah.
From having like started off at Franciscan, I'd say that like even, going to Franciscan, it can be difficult to establish a prayer life even here, because the classes are tough. You'll have friends and you'll have things that people are like, oh, volunteer for this ministry or that, and be doing different things, be running around, especially at the very beginning freshman year. It's stressful just trying to readjust to get everything together, when one of the most important things is a consistent prayer life. So, and especially for me, I remember it was difficult because in the fall semester, I was in the priestly discernment program. And not too long into it, because I had technically been discerning for years before that, because I really thought I was called to the priesthood. But not long into the semester, I discerned out of that program. And it felt similarly to a breakup, because, that's something I had really, truly desired for, a lot of my life. And now that wasn't there, it made like going to mass difficult. It made praying extremely, extremely difficult. So trying to pray in the midst of that was, on top of like actually needing that, because just being in college, I mean, just in general for your spiritual life, you need prayer. So having to try and do that in the midst of that was difficult. But it's something that's extremely needed, because I would say don't think for a second that even if you're going to a Catholic university, don't think for a second that you're not going to run into difficulties. There can be difficulties that you can go through. And if you have too much of a flowery puff mind going in of just like, oh, I'm going to this Catholic university and it's going to be wonderful and everything will be okay. Well, in case it isn't always like that, it's going to be a rude awakening. I guess really a lot of the theme of this video is don't assume things.
Don't assume things for sure.
Yeah.
And if you do assume you're wrong.
Or pray the fourth glorious mystery, the Assumption of Mary. That's the only kind of assuming.
Right.
That's done for Catholics.
The general tip is don't assume and don't be prideful.
Yeah. That's
because I had a pretty solid foundation, but I had never been tested. And you test through fire. If you've never been tested, it sucks.
Yeah.
So definitely prepare for that and set up safety nets.
Yeah. Okay, last question, which is going back a little bit to what we were talking about before. How do you explain to your secular friends who are trying to change you that Catholicism is part of who you are? And how do you find secular friends at college who respect that part of you?
That's definitely a hard one because I definitely failed for most of that. I did have some friends that were secular, that were in the same friend group even, but who were way more respectful of the fact that I was Catholic. As with most times when you have been in the faith for so long and you start to fall away, you tend to have questions of like occasional moments of like, but should I be doing this? But why am I not like that anymore? Like, there was something before. Clearly it mattered, so maybe it should now. And I had some friends that I could talk to about, like, well, I was raised Catholic. I'm always Catholic, so like I don't even like read the Bible, and like I avoid mass as much as possible, which is a sin. Don't do that.
We're a Catholic channel. We are not advising missing mass.
Don't miss mass. There's so many graces. But I would say that like as far as explaining to secular friends that Catholicism is not just a belief but an identity, a lot of it is like, for one, you don't have to keep the same friends that you start with the first month of freshman year. So if you make a friend and after a month you guys have gotten really close, and then you start talking about your faith, which matters to you, and they don't like it, or they shut off, or they attack you for it, it's okay to leave them. And that's really hard.
Yeah.
And I can say that because I'm an extrovert and people matter so much to me.
Yeah.
But it's just knowing that it's okay to leave people that are toxic or that are not willing to accept you for who you are. And in my experience, actually, I found that a lot of the people that I didn't end up getting close to, but were still friends, that were the most accepting were some of the most secular. The people who were going to raves and doing drugs. If they support the fact that you're Catholic and they're not condemning you or harming your identity as a Catholic, and are willing to at least listen when you have dialogue about your faith, like that is probably the best case scenario, I would say, for secular friends. And just like finding them is hard for sure, because a lot of secular people, it's like, well, religion is evil, but a lot of it is you just have to prove that people are the ones that make religion look evil, and it's like your faith, like as a Catholic, like the Catholic faith is not evil.
Right.
There are bad seeds that represent it poorly, but like having Catholicism as part of your identity, it's super important, because you can't have a friend who doesn't like brown-haired people if your hair is brown. Like, it's just not gonna work. So if part of your identity, or part of what you want your identity to be, is Catholic, you can't maintain friendships with people who don't accept that part of your identity, because all it's gonna do is either cause you to lose your identity or them to make you feel bad for who you are. And that should never be the case when it's about your faith.
Yeah, so I guess the key is being able to, you can have friends that are not, Catholic, or, but there needs to actually be a friendship there, not a bashing back and forth.
For sure. Like, the biggest tip would be, like, whether they're secular or Christian, they have to actually be friends. Friends being someone who loves you for who you are, who respects your differences, who is willing to have honest, genuine dialogue, and to hold you to what you desire for your life as opposed to what they want for your life. So like if you have only secular friends that you have access to who respect the fact that you're Catholic, you should still be able to talk to them being like, hey, I'm having a crisis of faith. And they ideally would respect you enough and love you enough for who you are to at least address that with you, because even if it doesn't matter to them, it matters to you, and that should matter to them.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think talking to somebody about your differences in general, or talking about just needing help with what you have, even if they disagree with it, I think one of the most key things for evangelization, for talking to people that you would hope one day would become Catholic or whatever, is friendship, relationship is important. It shows the other person that you are not a monster. We talked about earlier of just like not externally think like that person's a monster, but kind of like on the back burner, just the way it's talked about. It's also important that you show them that you are a reasonable person by showing that you are a friend. That helps to be able to evangelize. But in general, like, this is why college is what you were saying for, like, a test for like being able to function in the world. That's how we need to construct everything. When we're talking to people that disagree with us, we can't be going and yelling at people all the time, just like, this, but this. We should be able to be on a level, at least minorly friendly, with people that disagree with us, even if we don't have time to form a relationship. And that will cultivate a better society in general, where we can talk about our differences instead of biting each other's heads off.
For sure. And like, not every, like, some people genuinely don't like talking about religion and faith. So it's possible to have friends that just don't like talking about that. And in that way, like, evangelization would be more a matter of doing, of showing we're Christians by our love, and just loving them as people and representing your identity as a Catholic appropriately. So that way, even though they don't like talking about it, they still accept that part of you, just because of who it's made you out to be. Like, who you are, I feel like to a lot of secular people, matters more than just what you label it as in a belief. So like, if you're saying, oh, well, I'm Catholic, and then you're really judgmental or really preachy, then they're not going to like you. But if you're like, oh, I'm Catholic, these are my beliefs and I stand by them, but I love you as a person. And if you don't want to talk about faith, that's okay. I will still love you.
And evangelize through my actions instead.
Like I said, like, I learned so much about what it means to be Christian by some of my most secular friends there. Like, one of my friends who was a raver, her life ideology was peace, love, unity, and respect. And she exemplified that by, when I told her that I was Catholic, she's like, that is amazing, and I respect you for that. I am not. I was raised that way, but I am not. And I still love you, and you can talk to me about whatever you want, but peace, love, unity, and respect. Like, to me, that was like, oh, you're so Christian, even though she was actively not identifying as that. Like, she resembled true love and Christian ideals in her willingness to respect a person's differences.
Well, I'm about out of water. You're probably about out of Mountain Dew.
A while ago.
Yeah. So since we don't have anything left in here, we have nothing left in here for you guys in this video. So thank you so much for watching. Please tune in for the next how-to when that comes out. Also, again, make sure to check out our Patreon campaign and consider helping us out there to continue making these videos.
And comment below. What are your tips and tricks on how not to lose your faith during the beginning of college?
Yeah, we'd love to hear about your experience. All right. Thank you, Zaira, for joining me in this. And we'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.